Now that we finished building the rims for the tires in Illustrator, we're ready to go back into Maya and then use those curves to build a three-dimensional surface. So here's the scene that we were working on before we jumped over to Illustrator. So to go ahead and get the curves for the tire in, let's go ahead and go up to File and then go to Import. And I'm going to go up one directory. And underneath the file type, let's choose this, or let's choose an Illustrator format. Okay, and the one that I chose, or the one that I saved out as the legacy, was this tire pattern for Maya. Go ahead and import that. And now here's the curves from Illustrator. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move these over. Okay, and what I can do now is, if you're using Maya 4.5 or later, you should have access to, underneath the Surfaces menu, a tool called Bevel Plus. Okay, and Bevel Plus is what we're going to use to now take these curves and make a three-dimensional surface out of them. So the order that you select these curves, that does matter whenever you're using Bevel Plus. You want to make sure, if you're going to use Bevel Plus, that the first curve you select is the outermost curve. From that point on, it really doesn't matter so much the order that you select these curves, just so long as the first one that you select is the outermost curve. Okay, so with all of these curves selected, what we can do is go up to Surfaces and go to Bevel Plus. And before I run this command, I'm going to go to the Options, and we're going to have to make a few changes to this before we actually start the extrude. By default, what you're going to get is just a straight bevel. In other words, no smooth curvature at all. So what we want to do is, on the outer bevel style, instead of a straight out, we want to make sure that this is set to a convex in. And that'll sort of bend the edges around. And then on the inner bevel style, you can see that's grayed out completely. That's because underneath there's a checkbox called Same as Outer Style, which we don't want to have turned on. For the inner bevel style, you want to set this to a concave in. Let's see, there was concave in, and actually on the bevel, outer bevel, it wasn't convex in, it was convex out. I chose the wrong one. For the bevel, let's see, the extrude distance, by default it's set to 0.25. Let's raise that up to about 0.4 so that it extrudes this surface out a little further. And then on the Output Options tab, let's go ahead and change this along curve samples to something like 12, which will give us a little bit smoother surface. And we want to output it as a polygon. And with all those set, let's go ahead and bevel this. And when you run the bevel command, it might take a few seconds to actually convert this surface. And it's going to sit here and think about this for a few seconds, depending on the speed of your system and the complexity of the surface that you're asking it to make. We've got a fairly complex surface that we're asking it to evaluate, because you've got this outer curve, and then you've got not just one inner curve, but several inner curves. Okay, so here's the surface that results from that. And you can see that on the outer bevel style, I do have now a nice rounded edge. On the inner bevel style, I have this nice rounded edge on the lug nut sockets, but here on these holes, it actually has beveled it the wrong way. Rather than beveling it out and around, it's actually beveled it in. So you might want that, you might not. For me though, I really don't want that. What's causing that is these curves that are making up this socket. So what we can do is, let me go ahead and just under Show, let me turn off polygons to make it easier to select these curves. let's go ahead and select all 5 of these curves that make up these spaces. Go ahead and turn polygons back on. And with these 5 curves selected, let's go up to curves, and let's reverse curve direction. Okay, and let's give it just a second to think about that. And what that should do is now flip that bevel around so that that bevel progresses in the same direction as the lug nut sockets. So now that we've reversed that curve direction, now we have a nice beveled surface. Okay, in the next video, we'll go ahead and get this into shape.